Are you sick of wasting time explaining your offering to people who still don't seem to get it? You're not alone. In this video, I'm going to cover the common reasons why it's really hard to explain your offering, but more importantly, how to fix them too. So I need to jump into my computer for this one to explain it to you. So there are four main reasons why you find it really hard to explain what you offer, what you do to people. I'm going to cover them here and I'm going to explain to you why they're happening and how we can solve them. So the first one is you're too close to what you're doing. So your perspective is extremely narrow and you're too close. It's that classic phrase, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So you're too close. And to put this into perspective, probably seen this meme before. So there's a number on the floor there. Somebody thinks it's a 6. Somebody thinks it's a 9. Who's right? Well, it's a matter of perspective. And unfortunately, if you're on the left-hand side and you're insisting that that's a 6 and you're talking to buyers who talk in 9s, there's just going to be a mismatch. So your perspective, you're too close to what you're doing. And the only way to overcome this is to get somebody outside of your business to question you, to ask you. You need to find the pickiest person you know to ask you the simple, stupid, obvious questions and to really interrogate what you're up to. The other thing that you can do is look at the language of your buyer. So if you've had any reviews, case studies, testimonials, or if your competition have, look at how they describe your offering and what you're up to, and then adopt that language. But unfortunately, our natural default is to talk about things that matter to us in terms we understand. We're too close to what's going on. And that's the first reason. You're too close. Your perspective is completely blinkered. And that's stopping you from connecting with your buyer. You may as well be speaking a different language. The second reason is, it's along the same kind of lines, is you focus on the wrong things. So if you're talking about things that matter to you, you're then not going to necessarily appreciate why people are buying your offering and how to communicate to them. And the classic example here that I use are airline adverts. Most airline adverts look like this. There's very rarely a plane or a plane seat in those adverts. Why? Well, that's because the holiday companies know, the airlines know, that would you like to go on holiday and would you like to buy a plane seat are two very different questions and they'll be received very differently. So in this case, they're using something called syntax, which is a posh term for ordering. They're changing the ordering of what they focus on, and they're focusing on what matters to the buyer first. So would you like to go on holiday to Australia and meet the kangaroos and be all relaxed? Oh, yeah, I would. That's really exciting. Versus, do you want to spend like 12 hours in an economy seat all the way to Brisbane or Sydney, wherever that is? Not so much. So in your own business, or for your own product or your own service, think about what are your clients and buyers really buying from you? Because they're not buying the thing that you sell. And it gets a little bit meta, but if you can stay with me and if you can make sense of this, you'll be ahead of literally like 99% of businesses out there. Nearly every business that I speak to has this challenge. And I use myself as the example here. So my company, Clear Sales Message, we help people to do exactly this stuff, right? Articulate their value proposition so they can sell more stuff. But what people actually come to me for is confidence. That's what they're really buying from me, is confidence. Because when you have an answer for everything, so to speak, when you can't be unseated in a selling scenario, there's no objection too hard, no question too difficult, you have this sense of calmness and confidence, and that's going to help you promote your offering and move your business forward. So for me, I theme my communication to my clients around confidence, and that helps me to connect with them because that's what they're really buying. And that's what I've understood from dealing with literally over 500 different businesses and entrepreneurs, helping them with their messaging. So find out what your clients and buyers are really buying. It's often a feeling or an emotion: pride, peace of mind, safety, confidence, relaxation. It'll be a very human, very real world thing. Ideally, it's just a single word per buyer type, a single word per buyer type, and then you theme your communication around that, because everybody wants to go on holiday. Nobody really wants to buy a plane seat. And on this video, it seems like a really obvious, stupid thing to say, but if you look at your website, your socials, your communications you're putting out there, what are you selling? Are you selling the destination and this amazing contextual feeling of what's going to happen? Or are you selling somebody the actual features, the widgets, the nuts and bolts? And again, that comes from your perspective. So you're too close to what you're doing. You're probably selling the wrong thing. I mean that respectfully, but you're probably saying the wrong thing. The third thing is you're saying too much. So I meet a lot of people who feel like they have to give you just blah, 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 as much as possible, and then you can pick through and you can find what matters to you. And unfortunately, the attention span of human beings doesn't work like that. And if you've ever used Reels and Instagram stories and shorts and all this kind of stuff, you know the speed with which you go through this stuff. Attention span is a precious thing. So we actually need to say less, and it's the hardest thing in the world to say less and to shrink things down, but this is where we need to be. So to put this into context, this is what I call the granularity problem. So we have a seller, and a seller goes straight for detail. So this is the plain seat, here are the features, this is it, boring, 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 statistic, a feature dump. Why are they doing that? Well, because they're too close to it and they don't know what their buyer's buying. Points 1 and 2. They don't know what the buyer's buying. They're too close to it. So they're just talking about things that matter to them in terms they understand, and then they presume the buyer's going to meet them there. But the buyer doesn't meet them there. You see, before the buyer can get into detail, they have to actually understand what you're offering them first of all, which sounds really obvious and flippant to say, but it's crucial to getting your point across. So I meet lots of businesses and entrepreneurs who jump straight into detail when actually we should focus on understanding, and we skip past it. So we're saying too much. So reducing the amount of words you say, I can't solve that in a YouTube video. There's lots of different ways that we can do that, but I can get you from features to benefits in 4 simple words. So if you find yourself feature dumping and talking to people and telling about all this intricate stuff, and you think, oh, hold on, I'm blowing their mind here, all the boring details they probably don't care about, use these 4 words. What that means is. What that means is. What that means is a nice bridge from the feature of something to its benefit. So for clear sales message, if I use myself as the example here, so clear sales message, we look at all of the questions that you could possibly ask, and we'll give you an answer for every single one of them. You'll be prepared. What that means is, on a sales call, you'll feel confident, you'll feel in control, and you're more likely to convert somebody because you're getting the point across and you're doing so in a relaxed and confident way. So what that means is how we go from features to benefits, but really pay attention to this one in particular, the granularity problem. Don't throw too many words at your buyer and expect them to understand. It's not going to happen. You're going to blow their mind and overload them. They're just going to, oh, I don't really understand that. And they're going to kind of mentally leave the conversation. So we've got the issue of you being too close to your offering to really be able to be independent and talk about it in a different way. Secondly, we've got that challenge of you're selling the wrong thing, probably. You're selling the plain seat. You should be selling the holiday. Next, you're bamboozling people, giving them too many words, just overloading them. We really need to simplify it. And the final thing that I see on a daily basis is we presume a level of understanding. So I'm dealing with CTOs and CIOs and whoever these people might be. They should know what that means. They should know this and that. My argument is always, but what if they don't? You're taking a risk there. We can't presume any level of understanding, because even in that exchange there, I've referenced CTO, CIO, a couple of acronyms. Do you know what they are? Maybe you don't. A CTO is a Chief Technical Officer, CIO, Chief Information Officer. But if you don't know what those things mean, and this is a selling conversation, then you're not going to ask me, and you're probably not going to have time to Google it, and you're just going to disconnect from me because you just don't get it. So we cannot presume any level of understanding. I don't think you can deter somebody by explaining something to them. Because if I explain a CTO as a Chief Technical Officer, yeah, James, I know that, that's fine. Great. I can't deter you and insult you by doing that, but I can absolutely lose you by throwing out acronyms like that, and you just don't understand them. You just don't get them. So to solve this one, this presumption of understanding, we go to something called the Feynman technique. So the Feynman technique, in a nutshell, is explaining things to children. That's it. So we choose the concept that we're talking about. So we're trying to sell our offering, and then we consider, how do we teach that to a toddler? How do we relay that to a child in terms they would understand? Because if you're speaking with a child, what are you going to do? You're going to use fewer words, fewer syllables. You're going to I get excited and talk quick. You're going to slow down what you're talking about. You're going to not presume they know anything at all. And you're going to explain things in the simplest way possible. So the Feynman technique is this idea of, or if you have children, then test it on them. And I test it on my children all the time. Explain something to them and see what they say. And the real world example for me here, again, is myself. So my eldest son, I asked him years and years ago, what do you think Daddy does for a living? How would you describe it? And he turned around to me, I think it was about 7 or 8 at the time. And he said, you're kind of like a teacher. You kind of teach people how to sell. Absolutely brilliant. And I've used it ever since. So often when I introduce myself, I'll say, hi, I'm James Newell. I teach people how to sell. And that's so basic and simple that anybody could understand it. So depending on your offering, this could be a bit of a challenge, but how would you explain something to a child where you wouldn't presume understanding? You'd use simpler language and terms. So syllables are expensive, so you'd use fewer syllables, you'd use smaller words, simpler sentence structure. And if you just toy with that, that's what you need to do to avoid the trap of presuming somebody knows something when perhaps they don't. And ultimately, it's going to cost you the opportunity, the sale, because it's just going to disconnect from you because they just don't get it. So there you have it. 4 of the key reasons why people find it really hard, founders find it really hard to explain their offering to people. We're far too close to it. We need some independence. We need somebody else to help us ask the stupid questions and challenge things and use that perspective. We're often selling the wrong thing. So sell the destination, not the journey. What are people really buying from you? And are you communicating that effectively on your website, in your communications, your socials? Are you just blowing people's minds by saying, hey, we work with blah, 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 all these different people and we solve blah, 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 all these different problems, and people just can't understand or connect to it and they'll just eject out of the conversation? And then the final one is presuming understanding. So using jargon, acronyms, or just assuming people know everything you do is a dangerous game to play. Because even if I am a really technical person and I should know something, do I? The risk of me not knowing it will cost you the sale. And to overcome that, we use the Feynman techniques. We just try to explain things to children. Simpler concepts, fewer words, fewer syllables. So there you have it. That's why it's hard for founders and salespeople in general, to be honest, to explain their offering, to really connect with buyers. And connecting with buyers is the first step in the process before they actually buy from you. If somebody doesn't understand what you're doing, then they certainly can't buy from you. If you need help with this stuff, then please feel free to hop on over to my website, clearsalesmessage.com, where I share my 3-step process of how to create a message that sells. It's completely free. It's about a 5 to 10 minute video. It goes into a little bit more detail and it will help you to overcome this problem.